Good morning and good Sunday. I hope this new day finds you well. I've spent the last few months talking to a cell phone. And I have to say, at the very beginning, it was like the world's worst minister's nightmare of absolutely no one coming to church. Prue came. You know, I tried to tell her not to, and she doesn't listen to unreasonable demands. So she did what she needed to do. And so many people came to see if they could help to redirect the service, help to offer music for the live performances, help to figure out what we were going to do next after we entered into this strange, difficult, and strange time. And it was so lonely. But it was an amazing thing to know that you were out there. It strengthened, you know, I speak romantically about the church being residing within us, and that's never been more real to me than with what we've shared this last year. So thank you for that. My name is Leon Dunkley, and I am honored to serve here at North Universalist Chapel Society, or North Chapel in Woodstock, Vermont. Today is Sunday. For once, it actually is. July the 11th. And the title of this morning's reflection is Choosing the Better Club. It's about choosing the right tool for the right job, and it picks up on a story that we shared last week. To all souls, I say good morning. It is good to be together. I took pictures. I took pictures of the marks that the storm had left on the healing path that led up to the chapel at Star Island, where I was for the last 2 weeks. We saw the storm, Elsa, in a way that you did not, as I understand. We were pummeled and thrown side to side. There was wind coming through. There was rain coming through our windows because the rain was falling laterally. It was awesome to be out there. But I took pictures of how that storm had affected the island. I took pictures of places where the rainwater had pooled and puddled, blocking the path entirely where my feet had intended to step. Once upon a long time ago, I wrote a song about photography and about life and its lessons that allow us to grow. Not a boundary is what I called this song, no capital letters. I used to think that was unassuming and more hip. For some reason, I've taken your picture. That was the first line of the verse. I was trying to capture the fading image of an old love. For some reason, I've taken your picture. Focus my light on your frame to strike a balance. So later on, friend, when you're gone again, somehow I'll still have you. And for some reason, I've kept all of your letters all in one place, each in cases, slightly damaged. Sometimes I can still pretend, and I try to read them over for the very first time again. The refrain that preceded the verses set the verses up in an interesting way. It allowed the song to blossom over time because the refrain changes slightly. I had felt trapped at that time in my life, trapped between the desperate dramas of my early 20s, dramas that I thought would collapse me, and I have trouble remembering now. Bonnie Raitt wrote a song about this feeling in a beautiful song that she's called Used to Rule the World. We used to rule the world. She says, Dr. Feelgood, sleeping on a concrete bench, can I get a witness? In Myth, South Carolina, in 1975, somebody stole your crown. You were all wrapped up in your daily grind, and the cost of living didn't even cross your mind, and now you're mystified, standing with the rest of us who used to rule the world. All of us has-beens watching time go by. Bonnie Raitt sings, Mr. Blueprint, you used to have it figured out, and now you can't find your car. Time passes, and we get a little gray. Did I ever tell you that I met Bonnie Raitt? Did I ever tell you that story? I was in New Orleans with a dearest friend, lifelong companion, someone I've known since childhood, an artist, excellent. I've quoted her music to you several times. Dana Kurtz is her name. I'm hoping that she'll come out here and spend some time with us at some point. But Dana came up to me and said, hey, you know what, there's a party tonight. Do you want to go? Bonnie Raitt's going to be there. So my heart jumped out of my chest. I was thrilled. But I betrayed my feelings when I answered my dear friend's question. I said, I don't know, do you want to go? Do you think it'll be any fun? And she saw right through me, of course, as she always does, as she always will, I hope, as she always has for sure. And despite how uncomfortable it can be to be so clearly seen by someone, I really appreciate her presence in my life. So we went off to the party and I started practicing my lines. What would I say if I actually got a chance to meet the famous Bonnie Raitt? On the outside chance that I actually had a chance to talk to her, I wanted to be prepared. So I decided not to be silly and naive as an adoring fan, and I tried not to be starstruck in the presence of one of my musical heroes. So I decided not to say something like, you know what, it's such an honor to meet you, and I've loved your music my whole life. Didn't want to do that. Bonnie and Dana know each other. They know each other's music. They know the tragedies and the challenges of trying to make it as a performing artist. And because I know Dana as well as I do, I figured I could say something that was more engaging. So we go to the party. It was upstairs in the private residential part of an old music studio in New Orleans, still an active studio. There was a lot of food, gumbo, red beans and rice. It smelled amazing. It was pretty dark at the party. It was very close, comfortable, casual. I loved being there. I met tons of people from all over the country. I fell into a conversation with a couple from New Jersey, which is where I'm from. That happens sometimes. And then the moment came. Dana touched me on my shoulder, and I turned around and I saw her, and she said, hey, Lee, let me introduce you to Bonnie Raitt. She's beautiful. She's gorgeous. She glows. And her energy is amazing. She's disarmingly kind and really quite short. You know, she's really quite short. And I was prepared for that, but I wasn't prepared for her kindness. Her kindness pushed me off my feet. She said, hello, Leon, it's an honor to meet you. And my heart jumped out of my chest. I shook her hand and I thought to myself, my God, the music that this hand has made, the souls that music has touched, the lives that you've saved, the joy, the beauty that you have returned to this sacred world of ours. That was the feeling that I had. But that's not what I said. I betrayed my feelings, and I returned the greetings of my hero, Bonnie Raitt, by saying, it's such an honor to meet you. I've loved your music my whole life. I winced as I said these things, and she laughed because she knew that I had blown it. And she's so gracious, though, so she pivoted immediately, and she said, you know, don't you just love the music of our friend, Dana Kurtz? Like I said, I'm hoping that she will join us sometime. She lives not far from here. Anyway, the refrain of the song that I wrote about the troubles in my 20s, the song about photography, was about a feeling of being caught between a rock and a hard place. And it was about moving beyond those feelings, breaking free of that feeling into something that was more authentic. The words in the refrain that begins and ends the song are, I'm not in the middle, and I'm not in between hard sides moving in. I'm out on an edge. And there's a line before me, but it's a borderline and not a boundary. For some reason, I've taken your picture. This is where we may feel like we find ourselves right now, newly arrived at a place that we had not imagined before. newly free from constraint, newly free from hard sides moving in. I took pictures of the marks that the storm had left on the healing path that leads up to my heart, the sanctuary of blood and bone where I first learned how to sing. I took pictures of the places where the rainwater had pooled and puddled, blocking the path almost entirely where my feet had intended to stride. I took pictures of the place where the water had rushed and raced, where it had coursed and streamed, carving paths and riverways and crevices and tiny canyons in the sand beneath our feet. Hurricane Elsa marked us in that time back on Star Island. It marked us with its winds and with its waters. It carved its good way right past our defenses and past our pretenses, and it swept us far off course. And for a while we were adrift, but we landed. After the bewilderment, we landed, and here we are, a little stranded, a little shipwrecked after the rains, but safe and sound. Hurricanes can stir things up. They blow things down. They blow things away. They often bring such strangeness into the world. They devastate us. They blow us down. Certainly they did 10 years ago. But Elsa was not nearly as bad as it was back then. The rains only tapped on our rooftops this time around. Strangely and courageously, a group of beloved friends gathered soon after the storm had passed. In the backyard, behind an old church they called North Chapel, because of the very different type of hurricane that we've seen, we have a chance to come together after a very long time away. Our lives have been blown off course through wind and weathering, but here we are, together once again. Now, last week there was a story about a man who was an average golf player. Do you remember that story? Did anybody get a chance to hear it? It's a story about a man who participated in a golf tournament among 16 competitors. He was ranked 12th. Okay? He was not likely to win. But for some reason, everything went his way that day. Every wind, every noise, every nuance that was happening that day, every break that could fall fell in his favor. And at the end of the day, he emerged victorious. He won. He was first among 16, where he had been ranked 12th. And the local newspapers were amazed this was going to be a great story. They took his picture. You know, there were famous golfers on this tournament, and he had beaten them all. So he was going to be the lead story that next afternoon, and the cameras flooded around him. He was the first person off the golf course. He won a $500 prize. They gave him a check right then and there, took his picture, and then when the more professional golfers, the more famous ones, started coming off the course, the media went to swamp them. They were much more interesting than this average guy that happened to win the game. So the man went back to his car. He didn't mind that the media were no longer giving him any attention, and he just wanted to get home back to his family. But he was approached by a woman who said, "Excuse me, I just have to talk to you for a moment. Do you have a moment?" And he said, "Sure." And he said, I feel embarrassed to say this. It's just that I don't know what I'm going to do." And he said, "What's the problem?" And she said, it's my daughter. I didn't know what to do about the seizures, so I brought her to the hospital. When I got there, the doctors went through the first round of tests, but they were inconclusive. What they need to do now is the second round of tests, and I told them to go ahead, but these tests are expensive and I don't have insurance. And I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. Do you think that there's any way that you could help me? And he said, do you not have any family, anyone to turn to? She said, "No, I'm alone." He said, "What's your name?" And she said, "My name is Eleanor Brown." And he said, "Okay." And he reached into his pocket and he took out his prize, the $500 check that he had just won. and he signed, "Pay to the order of Eleanor Brown," on the back of the check. And he gave it to her, and she was astounded, slack-jawed. And he turned and he got into his car and he drove away. And he noticed there was one media guy running after him, trying to trace him down, but he just didn't want to have anything to do with him that day. So he drove away. Months later, that same golfer entered another tournament, and once again he was ranked at the bottom, but he wanted to succeed. So the newspaper people gathered around him again, and they said, "What do you think your chances are this time?" Cheeky and pretentious. But he handled it very well. And after the media cloud had gone away, there was one guy that remained, and he said, "I ran after you. I don't know if you saw me, but I was the guy that was trying to chase you down last time. I have some news I need to share with you. The woman who approached you, well, let's put it this way. I'm a longtime journalist, and this has been my beat for some time. I've seen her around a lot of tournaments, and she has the habit of finding the winner and telling the winner some tale of woe and swindling from that winner the prize money. And I'm afraid that she did that to you." And he said, "Yeah, she did. She came up to me and she told me that her child was in the hospital and that she needed the money for some tests." And he said, "Well," the journalist said, I'm afraid that I have to tell you that story is not true." And the golfer said, "Do you mean to tell me that there is no child in the hospital that's suffering from seizures?" And the journalist said, "No, I'm afraid not." And he said, "Do you mean to tell me that there's no child at risk from life-threatening seizures for which there is no cure or antidote or understanding of what it is?" And he said, "That's true." And he said, "There is no child in danger." And he said, "That's correct." And the golfer said, "That is the best news I've heard all day." Most golfers try to pick the right club out of the golf bag. But the club that this golfer had entered was the club of the open-hearted, the club of the compassionate, the club of the patient, of the gentle, and of the wise. I wonder if we might pick that club as well. I have a friend of mine, as we move towards closing, a friend of mine from Knoxville, Tennessee. His name is Chris Bice. He's the minister out at that church. I appreciated your words this morning, as powerful as they are. We are in and have been in a devastatingly powerful place with violence, that Molly helped us to see. Molly McHugh helped us to see earlier today. When this violence visited the Tennessee Valley, the church of the Tennessee Valley in Knoxville, 2 people died. A gunman entered the church and raised his weapons at children, and 2 members of the congregation stood in front of the weapon and lost their lives, but saved the children. I'll tell that story at some point, maybe if Chris comes to visit. But he's the one that wrote these words. He said, "What are we going to do when we get back together? How are we going to figure out how to span our differences? How do we start small and then go deep?" So he said, "Here, you guys," on the minister's Facebook page. Can you believe that there's a UU Ministers Facebook page? And it always starts like, "Can you believe?" No, I'm just kidding. But this is what he offered, and I thought I'd say it. It's a responsive reading, and in his example, he says the response is, "We are the church." I'm going to ask that we say, "We are North Chapel," just so that we can keep it local here, and because North Chapel means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And let's also think about the impact that North Chapel has in the wider society. So I will say a line, and I will ask you to respond if you feel so moved, okay? Is that okay? Okay, here we go. We are the young mother with a risk of pregnancy who cannot get the vaccine. We are North Chapel. We are the single person who has been living in isolation for this year. We are North Chapel. We are the parents whose children are too young to receive the medicine. We are North Chapel. We are the empty nesters longing for companionship. We are North Chapel. We are the newly vaccinated teenagers eager for youth groups. And we are the teens who are not old enough yet. And we are the elderly in nursing homes who yearn for visitors. And we are the healthcare professionals and the frontline workers weary and in need of rest. We are in North Chapel. And we are the ones who have been resting in place who are bursting now with energy. We are the ones who want to be able to sing together again. And we are the members of a small group ministries longing to reunite. We are the immunocompromised. We are the infants born this year. We are the memories of those who died this year. We are those celebrating new freedoms. We are those grieving old losses. We are the ones who are together in this congregation at this moment. We are the ones watching online. We are the ones committed to building a free faith where all souls are welcome. Welcome to the dreamers and to the seekers of spirit, to the soft-spoken and to the singers of life. Welcome to the wanderers and to the worshipers, and to the darkness and to the light. Welcome to the open ones and to the broken ones among us, and to every blissfully imperfect soul who is just like me, blessed and beloved beneath the lucky stars of heaven, given in care and in compassion for one another, given, as we all are forever with and forever for one another in compassion, soul level deep, in good times and in tempest, in conflict and in consensus, held, whole, and honored by a love that knows no bounds. To all souls, I say good morning. It's good to be together again. It's good to see you. Let's keep doing this. May it be so. Blessed be. And amen. For our closing hymn, I want to invite you to sing There is a River Flowing in My Soul. We'll do it in 3 parts. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. And there's a river flowing in my mind. So soul, heart, mind, and then we'll come back around to soul again. Do you know the melody? The melody goes, there's a river flowing in my soul, right? There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart that births in me a new spirit, a spirit that sometimes hides in places where you can't see it, and you can't see it from where you are right now. But there's a young man in the front row who's dressed reasonably, it would seem, except when he sits down in his chair, his pants kind of hike up and you can see his socks, and they're not just black socks, are they, John? They're socks with the Boston Red Sox B on them. May we develop the spirit enough in us to find the victorious, to find the sporting, to find the daring as we move forward in these good days at the end of a long, hard year. May it be so. Blessed be.